Hello my lovelies, and welcome to what should have been yesterday's video. Unfortunately I am filming this on the Friday because I wasn't actually very well yesterday, so I'm filming today because I'm feeling much better. I know that I normally do this a lot later in the month, however I have been reading more than normal. So I've picked my top 5. I am currently reading one which will take me till the end of this month to finish because it is a very large book. So yeah, but I've got my top 5 from this month, and yeah, I thought I would just run you through them and what I enjoyed about them and just do my book club, my monthly book club video. So the first one that I want to talk about is this one, and this is called The Swallow and the Hummingbird by Santa Montefiore. Santa Montefiore is a very good writer. She's got a lot of books out. She does actually live in England. She is actually English, however her parents are from Argentina, and a lot of her books are based in sort of Latin America, etc, and sort of following sort of that part of her heritage, I suppose. They're very well read. This one in particular is about a young man who goes away to war, the Second World War, and he leaves behind his sweetheart, and then he comes back and decides that he can't live in his small town anymore and needs to leave. So he runs away and stays with his aunt in Argentina and ends up meeting a woman on the boat there and falling in love and calling it off with his old sweetheart, and he has to come back 18 years later when his father dies, and this girl has been stuck in time. She still adores him, still loves him, he's the love of her life, she can't let it go, and they come back and it's all a bit tense and a bit difficult. So this really is a fantastic book. If you kind of have if you enjoy romance that's not completely romantic, then this would be for you. I do not like mushy romance stories. I hate them. I think they're pointless. This is, however, has got a bit of something else to it, and a lot of her books have that. Whilst they all follow this sort of romantic theme, they're all different, and there's something else there. There's some different feeling there. It's not just a romance novel. So, yeah. Now, the next book that I want to talk about is actually something I got for Christmas, and I read it, well, I got it for myself just after Christmas, and I've been reading it, and it is The Tales of Beedle the Bard. Now, this is a very short book. It's a book of wizarding fairy tales written by J.K. Rowling, so it's all part of the sort of Harry Potter world, and in this one it has footnotes by Hermione and what was that? And Dumbledore in it. So yeah, it's really fun to read. It's just like these little, I don't know, like fairy stories that we have, you know, Cinderella and all of this stuff, and there's a little compendium just of little fairy tales with morals, sort of like Aesop's fables, in it, and it's quite fun to read. It's quite entertaining. Again, it's just a little read. This could be something pretty good to read to a child, or particularly if you're a lot younger. There is a couple in here that you probably wouldn't want to read to a child, but definitely a couple of them would definitely be quite fun to read to a child, I think. A bit like The Hopping Pot and Babbity Rappity and The Cackling Stump, which you probably will have heard of. This is actually mentioned in the Deathly Hallows, and it's a really fun little book to read. I wouldn't say that it's like a novel or anything, it's a really funny book to read, and I would really recommend it. Speaking of which, I finished reading all of the Harry Potter books this month, which of course ends in the Deathly Hallows. I love all of anything Harry Potter at all. I absolutely adore it. I even have my Snape necklace, my always necklace on. But yeah, I'm a massive Potterhead, and I really love Harry Potter. And so I finished reading the book. I read this in about a week and a bit, which is quite impressive. Like, it's a pretty hefty book, and it's just, J.K. Rowling has invented a world that she really went into depth with. You know, you've got Pottermore, which kind of goes behind all the charms and the spells, and you know, the wand cores and the wandwoods, and you know, it's so deep, and it gets really deep into it, and nobody has created a world like that. except for the possibility of Tolkien, nobody else has created something to this level. And that, to me, is absolutely amazing. I mean, obviously, if you've watched Harry Potter at all, or if you've read the books, you know what happens in this. It's the final the final battle for Hogwarts. It's, you know, about Harry defeating Voldemort eventually, and I think the only thing that is slightly disappointing is the ending, which I'm sure if you've seen the films, you know what the ending is. Ron marries Hermione and has some kids, and Harry marries Ginny and has some kids, and they're all on the platform 9 3/4 ready to wave their children off to Hogwarts. And I don't know, I found it a bit disappointing. I mean, obviously the cursed child then leads on from that, which I do need to get because I haven't actually read that. But yeah, I will leave obviously all links to where you can buy these books in the description box down below. So yeah. And the next book that I want to talk to you about is this. And now this is called The Little House by Philippa Gregory. As some of you may know, Philippa Gregory was the author of The Other Boleyn Girl, which was then made into the film, which is fantastic. But she has written an awful lot of others. She has lots and lots and lots of different types of books, not just historical fiction, and this is one of them. This is based in the 90s. It's about a woman whose husband family are very controlling, they're very manipulative, they're a little bit strange, and they live in a flat in Bristol and they love it. And then she is made redundant, and her husband decides, right, okay, she's going to get pregnant, so he kind of makes it happen, and she finds out she's pregnant. And then, because her father-in-law bought the flat that they live in, he actively sells it to make them move into a cottage that's at the bottom of their lane. They live in like a big country manor, and so they move in, and the house isn't ready for habitation, so they have to go and live with her parents-in-law. And what it first starts off as sort of like concerned control is the only way I can describe it. It makes you feel like they're caring about you, but you're actually being controlled. They were making decisions about her pregnancy. They were sort of telling her what she could and couldn't eat, etc., etc., which struck a chord with me because obviously I've been pregnant before, and it's a very difficult time. You know, you don't want somebody telling you what you can and can't do. I mean, this woman is quite meek, but if she was anything like me, they'd have been told to write off. Yeah. But anyway, and so she has the baby, and unfortunately there are complications when she goes and has the baby, and she needs to have a cesarean section, which again I can relate to totally. However, back in the 90s it was not like now. If you have an emergency C-section, you're awake, unless something is very, very wrong. You're awake, so you're numbed, but you're awake. And back then, if you needed an emergency C-section, 9 times out of 10 you were knocked unconscious. You were given full anaesthetic, which meant that she couldn't hold her baby after birth, and she didn't bond, and she found it very, very difficult. She ended up with postnatal depression. She went to her doctors, and the doctor gave her some tablets, amitriptyline, and she ended up abusing those tablets. And sorry, that's my toddler doing some very weird noises. Anyway, and throughout all of this, her mother and her father-in-law are sort of conspiring to take the baby. They deem her and declare her unfit. She is taken away for a month for a convalescence, and in that time they look after the baby as they should. Now, her husband, the father of the baby, is very much of the ilk of women stay at home, and my favourite phrase ever, they should be barefoot and pregnant and chained to the oven. That's how he thinks, and he thinks that when he gets home he shouldn't have to do anything. He shouldn't have to do housework, he shouldn't have to cook, none of that nonsense. And that's what his mother provides for him. So they end up being this really odd family unit of mother, father, son, grandson in this one. It's a very strange setting. And eventually this woman is released and she goes back home, and all of the family are saying that she is not allowed to be unsupervised with her son. And eventually they allow her to be, and she goes out, and the baby's sick all over himself, as babies do. They bring up their feed, and then he falls asleep. And when she gets home, she puts him back down in his cot because she doesn't want to wake him up. And then the mother-in-law, who apparently just lets herself into the house, came in and found the baby like this and freaked. And then she took the baby away again. And it all culminated in this woman having enough, saying, no, this is my son, I'm fighting for my son, I want my son, you're not taking him from me. And what her mother-in-law used to do is, back then, I mean, a lot of people still do it now, but back then it was far more common. You used to sort of put the baby outside in the garden, just outside the back door. You could hear him or her, you could, and you would potter around your house and do what you had to do. But you could hear the baby, you would be in range of the baby, etc., etc. It was all perfectly safe. I've done it with my son. And what the mother-in-law used to do is the mother-in-law used to just come in and move the pram and peer over the pram, which is, whilst seems very, very trivial to a mother who has a child who is not sleeping very well, that is like a grenade, because you're like, if you wake up that baby, I'm going to kill you, sort of thing. And she just keeps on doing it. So what this woman does is she takes the baby out of the pram, keeps the baby safe indoors, and attaches a live wire to the buggy, so that when her mother-in-law comes in and touches the buggy, she gets electrocuted and she dies. Now, when I read that, I was like, oh, okay, I kind of expected that to happen. What I didn't expect was, because I thought she would take her child, run. She would be a single mum, she'd get away from all this, and she'd live her life. No. What she did is she then almost took her mother-in-law's place. So it was all very peculiar. It's a very odd book. It was quite tricky to understand, but it was incredibly well written, and it's very, very psychologically gripping. You don't want to stop reading it. You just want to keep reading. You want to find out what happens. And it's just a brilliant, brilliant book. It's fantastic. I definitely recommend it. And for the final, or last but not least, number 5 book of this month is this. Now, I did a review of this a little while ago, so I won't go into too much detail, but this is a book called Clarence, and it is from a set of books called The Old Kingdom by Garth Nix. Garth Nix has written many, many books, and he's absolutely fantastic. This one is almost like a prequel. You have Sabriel, Lyriel, or Porson, and then you have this one, which almost takes place in the past. It's kind of odd, but it's a really, really good book. It's just about this girl who is actually a relative of the Queen, or the King, and the Porson. So she's part of the royal family and part of the Porson family, which means she has immense power, and she ends up becoming a necromancer. And yeah, it's a really fantastic book if you love fantasy stories and things like that, which I do. I will read anything, as I'm sure you've noticed, but fantasy is definitely my favourite sort of genre of book, and they're such enjoyable books to read. Again, Garth Nix is a very fantastic writer. You really feel like you're there, you really feel like you're a part of it, and you really feel like this could happen to you, although it physically can't. There's magic, but and they're so fantastic. They're such fantastic books. So I would definitely recommend all these. And again, like I said, I will leave links to all of these books in the description box down below. And that is the end of today's video. So I really, really hope you've enjoyed it and you've enjoyed this month's book club. And I will be back next month with more books, and I will be back tomorrow for another video. So please give it a big thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and press the big red subscribe button if you want to see some more of me. I will leave all of my other links in the description box down below: Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, and my blog. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye bye.